number 154615, People versus William Melendez.
Appears for the record.
Good morning, Your Honor. Robert Donaldson, attorney on behalf of the people.
Carmen DeFranco on behalf of the people.
John Donaldson on behalf of the people.
Very good. Are we ready to proceed?
Yes, sir. James Thompson, on behalf of William Melendez, at this point.
Witness, you're still under oath.
Yes, sir.
You're still under oath.
Yes, Your Honor, thank you.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Judge. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
I'd like to talk a little bit about your experience, if I might. You were on the job in Detroit for quite some time, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
How many years?
Put that microphone close to your face.
Yes, ma'am. From June of '95 till March of 2014.
And you left Detroit, you were deputy chief, is that correct?
Yes,
How long had you been deputy chief before you left?
since September.
Right. September of what year?
I'm sorry, 2013.
All right. So how long were you deputy chief?
About 6 or 7 months.
And you left to take the job in Inkster, or did you leave before you took the job in Inkster?
No, I took a early retirement.
All right. And then applied to be the chief of police in Inkster?
Not exactly, no.
All right. You accepted the position of chief of police?
Yes.
Okay. You want to tell the jury how that happened?
I was contacted by the Michigan State Police seeking a chief in the city of Inkster.
All right. And Michigan State Police had a presence in Inkster, is that correct?
Yes, I do.
And you accepted that position, is that correct?
Yes, I did.
And how long were you chief of police in Inkster?
From August 4th of 2014 till April 22nd of 2015.
Being a boss isn't all that it's cracked up to be. Would you agree with that?
Depends.
How about in this particular circumstance?
I enjoyed my service in Inkster.
As a boss, you get blamed for some stuff you didn't do. Would you agree with that?
I agree that's a fair statement.
The buck stops here used to be the sign that Mr. Truman had on his desk. Is that right?
I don't know if he had that on his desk, sir.
Okay. The buck stops with you in Inkster. Is that correct?
Not exactly.
Well, as a result of what brought us here today in court, you're not the police chief anymore. Would you agree with that?
Did you say as a result of this?
Yeah.
I would.
These events led to that occurring. Is that correct?
To me no longer being chief?
Yes.
I would not agree.
Well, then what did cause you to leave?
I had a fundamental disagreement with the city manager and the administration on what direction the police department should go forward, how the department should go forward.
After this event?
Yes. And there was another disagreement as it related to indemnifying officers.
And
Indemnified, explain that for the judges of the fact.
Yes, essentially if you're acting under the color of law and the scope of your authority and you're...
Okay, them big old words.
Okay. If you're on duty as a police officer and you're taking action as a police officer, that the city would indemnify you for insurance purposes so you can't be sued personally.
Okay. Now, what was the position at that time? Did they indemnify officers or not?
At the time of this incident, they did. The disagreement I had with them was whether going forward they were going to indemnify, and as a result of that, I gave them my 30 days notice on the contract I had with them.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
you didn't want to get sued and not have them pay for it, right?
I'm sorry, you say, did she not want to get sued?
I think that is what you said. Is that
It
what you
is what I
said?
said.
You didn't want to get sued, is that correct?
I don't think it was an appropriate position for a police department to stand to take, nor do I know of any other department that fails to indemnify their officers.
Do you remember the question I asked you?
Do I want to get sued?
Did you?
I'm sorry.
Did you want to get sued?
No, I don't ever want to get sued.
Me either. And when you were the Detroit Police Department, did you ever work in internal affairs?
No.
Did you ever conduct an investigation that led to criminal charges against a police officer?
I made referrals to internal affairs.
Okay, but the question was, did you ever do an investigation? I take it the answer to that is no, is that correct?
Not in DPD.
And you've known Officer Melendez for quite some time, is that correct?
I've seen him in passing, yes.
Well, when did you first see him in passing?
I have no clear recollection of when I ran into Officer Melendez in DPD.
A year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, just your best.
When I took over as police chief in Inkster, I had not seen or interacted with Officer Melendez in quite some time.
Did you know him prior?
Not personally. Like I said, I may see him on the street or something, but I've never had a personal friendship or relationship with Officer Melendez.
Okay, very good.
Did you work with him?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, I could have, Detroit is a big city. You could end up on a scene with multiple precincts responding to a scene and not realize that you're on the scene with the same people. If you have a big event and say the 12th precinct responds, the 11th precinct responds, there could be multiple cars there. So in spirit of being honest, not that I recall.
All right, well, I appreciate the spirit of being honest. When you took over as police chief, was Officer Melendez on the force?
In Inkster?
Yes.
Yes, he was.
And is Inkster a big force or a small force?
It's small.
Inkster has significant financial issues that have caused their police department
At that time, please.
at that time had significant financial issues that caused the police department to be undermanned. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
And indeed, Michigan State Police, in conjunction with the city, agreed to help patrol that area, correct?
Yes, and they also help with investigations.
And
Let me ask this question, I'm sorry. What was your relationship with Michigan State Police that they brought the opportunity of being a chief police to you?
I had somebody that I went to staff and command with. It was Captain Monica Yes. She had called me and said that Inkster was looking for a police chief, and she thought that I would be a good fit based on my experience. And
Okay,
she asked
so
me
was
to
it someone
meet
you
with
knew
them.
in the Michigan State Police that alerted you?
Captain Yesh is the post commander, and she's also in charge of the units that are in Inkster.
Okay, very good, thank you. Go ahead, Tom.
I think where we left off, that Inkster was a relatively small police department at the time and undermanned. Is that correct?
Yes.
And Officer Melendez was one of the few officers that you had that had a lot of experience. Would you agree with that?
I didn't have a lot of officers, so few is relative, but I don't think seniority-wise, he was one of the top senior officers.
And you depended on him. Is that correct?
Again, I don't say he was a senior officer in terms of seniority in Inkster. I depended on all my officers.
All right. He was a productive officer?
To the best of my knowledge, yes.
And are you familiar with how your officers prepare themselves for going on the street in terms of the equipment that they use?
I am.
Were you familiar with what Officer Melendez had available to him when he was in uniform?
On that specific date, I'm not familiar with what he would have been available to him.
What tools are available to a police officer in the city of Inkster in terms of what they bring on duty and the tools that they can utilize to do their jobs?
Well, that depends on functionality and repair of certain things, but generally speaking, we would provide them with a radio that would allow them to communicate with dispatch. They would be offered the opportunity to take out a taser if one was charged and ready to go, but Inkster had a lot of financial challenges, as you mentioned, and sometimes equipment wasn't operable.
Do you know if batons were utilized by Inkster police officers?
I do not.
Some police officers wear weighted gloves. Would you agree?
I would not.
They sell them, don't they?
I have not bought any, sir.
That wasn't the question. They sell them, don't they?
Well, objection, now what's that got to do with this? If she doesn't know, it's not relevant. Who's they?
sustained.
Do you know if Officer Melendez owned a pair of weighted gloves?
No, I do not.
You had a suspect shoot you, is that correct?
That is true.
And you know what it feels like to be on the receiving end of an assault, is that correct?
Yes, I do.
And indeed, you've been present and sued yourself when suspects have been shot, is that correct?
Yes. Well, hang on. The city has been sued. I haven't always been a named defendant.
You haven't always, but you have been, correct?
In shootings?
Yeah.
Not to my knowledge.
Did you testify in a civil matter involving Mr. Grable?
I did.
And you testified that your partner had acted appropriately, is that correct?
It's a very short synopsis of my testimony. But yes, I believed my partner acted appropriately.
And your testimony was different than your police report, was it not?
Not that I'm aware of.
You were cross-examined about that, weren't you?
Sir, that was back in almost 20 years ago.
And the courts took note of that, is that correct?
Not that I'm aware of.
When did you first find out about the events that led us here today?
The evening of, or the early morning hours of January 29th, I believe.
And would you accept that it happened around 2 in the morning or thereabouts?
Somewhere in that range, yes.
And when did you first see the video?
I'm not sure if it was the next day or a day or so after. Shortly thereafter.
And you were aware that Mr. Dent had been hospitalized, is that correct?
Yes, I was.
And when you reviewed the video, you saw the damage that was done to him, is that correct?
I saw the injuries, yes.
And you knew he spent 3 days in the hospital, correct?
At the time I viewed the video, I don't know that he'd even been released from the hospital, so the 3-day total, I don't think so.
And as the chief, you are responsible, are you not, for the work product of the people that work for you?
Yes.
And there was a warrant presented for Mr. Dent, is that correct?
Yes, I believe so.
And was there a warrant request presented for any of the officers at the scene?
No, there was not.
Had you,
Well, let me correct that. No, there was not by the Inkster Police Department.
and there was no request for warrant ever prepared by the Inkster Police Department, correct? For Mr. Melendez or any other officer?
For the officers, no, there was not.
Did you assign the investigation into this matter to anyone within your department?
I assigned the administrative investigation to Sergeant Hayward.
And had Sergeant Hayward ever done one before?
I'm not sure.
Did you have to review his work product?
Yes, as well as the lieutenant did, yes.
And would you agree that that work product, part of the revisions were to remove a partisan presentation of the events?
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Yeah, what do you mean?
Right.
I ain't understand.
That it was slanted towards Officer Melendez.
The revisions I requested were to include all relevant facts, review of policy, and to include pertinent detail. I don't like the characterization you're trying to, I don't agree with your characterization, but I did send it back for the inclusion of evidence, data, facts, and review of policy.
And you also sent it back, didn't you? Because you didn't like the way a paragraph was written that was highly negative towards Mr. Dent without evidence. Is
Your
that
Honor, I
correct?
mean, I'll object it's vague. If he's got a paragraph he wants to show her, let him do that, and then let her fairly comment.
First of all, if he's impeaching her, which I believe that he is, or trying to show that there's bias, under the Michigan rule, he doesn't have to show it to her, okay? So, your objection's overruled. Go ahead, Councilor Long.
I'm going to show you a document, and take as much of a look at it as you wish, but I'd like
Did
to...
you show Mr. Thomas?
I believe he has
Do
it.
you have it, sir?
The date?
Please.
This is... I'm going to hand you a document. You can look at as much of it as you like. And my first question is, are you the ones that made the notations on that particular document?
It's my handwriting, yes.
And I'd like you to go to page 4.
Yes.
And I'd like you to look at a strikeout on that page, not reading it indefinite, but take a look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes or no, ma'am?
Yes, yes, sorry.
And would you agree that the author that you were correcting was attributing to Mr. Dent certain things you couldn't prove?
He made a subjective conclusion, yes.
He included things as it relates to Mr. Dent that you couldn't prove. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that investigation continued about the time of Mr. Dent's preliminary examination. Is that correct?
Yes.
And at that point in time, this case, this video, became the subject matter of a lot of media attention. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
And when was that in relationship to when you asked the Michigan State Police to step in and do an investigation?
I believe and I'm pretty sure I'm right on the dates. This Wednesday, March 18th. This was the date for Mr. Dent's preliminary exam when the charges of resisting and obstructing were dismissed. Is when I went to the state police, which was actually Thursday, the next day on the 19th.
From the point in time of the arrest until your contacting the Michigan State Police, did you ever try to get Mr. Dent's version of what happened?
No.
Why is that?
He had not made a complaint or brought any complaint forward.
What if he was dead? Could he make a complaint?
Not if he was deceased, no.
So your position is that unless they complain, you're not going to do anything?
No, there was an administrative investigation that was, as you said, sent back because I wasn't happy with the conclusions or the direction of my subordinates' investigation, and I wanted to make sure it was objective.
I'd like to switch gears for a second. Officer Zielinowski was a reserve officer, is that correct?
Yes, auxiliary.
Was part of, is there a difference between those two? I just don't know.
Not really. It's just what it's what he's called in Inkster.
Okay. And did you review his activity on that day?
Again, I assigned it for an administrative investigation, and as part of that administrative investigation, I reviewed the activity of all the individuals at the scene that took police action.
Did you find fault with what he did? Just yes or no for now.
No.
Was there any discussion about whether or not he cleared that vehicle before the stop?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
I didn't ask it well, so I'll try again. Officer Zielinowski has testified that he went to the right rear quarter panel and cleared the car. Do you know what that means?
I assume he would be looking for occupants or potential threats inside, either in the rear seat or the front passenger seat, but again, I'm assuming.
And you've seen the video, is that right?
Yes, I have.
That didn't happen, did it?
What do you mean it didn't happen?
You
What
see
part of it didn't
depicted
happen?
in the video with Officer Zelenuski at the right rear of the car with his flashlight out checking the car. Is that in there?
Not that I'm aware of.
And that was one of the things that he was to be counseled on. Is that correct? Not clearing the car?
I'm not sure.
You testified that there were 2 occasions when the vehicle ran a stop sign while you're watching the video. Is that right?
Yes, I said I think on the first one. The second one was much more clear.
In the first one, he has to come to a complete stop, doesn't he? Otherwise, he would have got T-boned, right?
T-bone me.
What's T-bone mean? You know what I meant, correct?
I think you mean that he would have collided with another car.
He would have got hit in the side, right?
I don't necessarily know that he would have gotten hit from the side, sir.
Okay. We can have this discussion if you'd like. The question is, there's traffic that goes in front of him going in both directions.
It appears there's a north and southbound traffic,
So
yes.
he had to have been stopped, right?
That's not true.
So he's driving through while the traffic is going through his car, or what?
He just had to be going at a speed slower so that he didn't enter the intersection at the same time, sir.
Okay. Yeah, we'll move. Isn't it true that the first time that you see Mr. Dent's vehicle, it's on Oakland Avenue, is that correct? On the video.
Oh, and they make,
First time you see it, it's on Oakland Avenue, is that right?
you'd have to pull it up and let me look at it. I didn't see any street name yesterday, but I believe, yes, it's on Oakland Avenue where the 2 stop signs were.
And you testified that you didn't see Officer Melendez choke Mr. Dent, is that right?
I said it was a head restraint.
Right. And that you didn't see him choke him, correct?
Correct.
Right. Didn't apply a chokehold, is that correct?
Correct.
Were you there?
No.
Would you say that Mr. Dent would be an accurate reporter of what happened to him?
That would be for the jury to decide.
That's correct, isn't it?
Yes.
And if he said he was choked, he was the one that was on the receiving end of whatever happened to him. Would you agree with that?
Is that a question? I'm sorry, can you repeat it?
Would you agree with what I just said?
Can
Yes, that is
can
a
you
question.
repeat it?
Mr. Dent would know, because he was on the receiving end of what happened to him out there, whether he got choked or not, correct?
You'd have to ask him, sir.
I have. I'm asking you.
I don't know what Mr. Dent knows, sir.
Because you never asked him, right?
I did not. Once the Michigan State Police started their investigation, we couldn't.
Well, you had it for quite some time, correct?
Correct.
And you never asked him.
I did not have the completed investigation at the time the state police were requested.
So you would ask him.
I don't think so, no.
The first time you saw that video, you knew something was wrong, didn't you?
I was uncomfortable with it, yes.
And you were hoping against hope that there was some justification for it, weren't you?
I don't think that's a fair characterization.
How would you characterize it?
I launched the investigation to get to the facts so I could make a determination as to the compliance with policy. That's what the administrative investigation was for.
You weren't concerned with how this would reflect on the department?
Oh, absolutely. I think the video is hard to watch. I think anybody would be foolish to say otherwise. And I'm always worried about the reputation of the department, so yeah.
And you were hoping that the reputation wouldn't be tarnished, weren't you?
I would never want to see the reputation tarnished.
And if there was not justification for what happened, it would be tarnished, would it not?
I don't necessarily would come to that conclusion. I think that the video on itself was, like I said, it was uncomfortable for people, and it's very hard to watch. So I think by itself it probably brought some tarnish, as you would say, to the police department.
Would it make a difference to you in your analysis whether or not the officer's version of what transpired that night, preceding the first time we see Mr. Dent's car on video, turned out to be a lie?
Would it make a difference in my determination?
Yes.
Yes.
If the officers lied about how they got there and what proceeded, if that would make a difference.
It would be very disturbing if they lied, yes.
You talked about the budget end being a high crime area, is that right?
I talked about the area being a high crime area. It sits in an area that's high crime.
And you talked about a number of, what did you call it, clemis hits?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury what a clemis hit is, what that is?
Basically, it's calls for service that it'd be in a database. Inkster uses CLEMIS. It's based out of Oakland County. It stands for County Law Enforcement Management Information System. And it basically is like a database. It also works with like CAD and tells you a history, like an address history. I can pull up a location and see what calls for service we've had and whatnot. How many times we've been there and for what types of things.
And you said that you ran the report for what time period and what was the response?
The 9 months prior, and that there were 34 hits. 31, excuse me.
And how much dope came out of there on those 34 hits?
I didn't pull the cases. I said, like I said, these are calls for service that I reviewed.
So there could have been no dope taken out of there during that time frame, right?
Again, I reviewed calls for service. I didn't review arrest reports.
Right. And how many guns were pulled out of there in this 9 months?
Same thing, I reviewed calls for service. I didn't review arrest reports.
A call for service can be a barking dog, right?
I can.
Right. Can be there's a suspicious guy there. Could be that, right?
Yes, I can.
Okay. That in and of itself doesn't tell you much about what crime is happening there. Would you agree with that?
No, again, that wasn't the only data I used. I also said that there were complaints from the community and there was other crime in the area, not specific to that location, including a homicide.
At that place?
I said not at that location, but in the immediate area. But again, the crime's not limited in scope to one building, and I said that, the area of that where it sits. But the CLEMIS history was specifically based on that address.
That's all right. You gave a lot of testimony yesterday where the words that were used in the question were as a reasonable officer. You remember all those questions?
Probably not all of them, but most of them.
But lots of them talked about being a reasonable police officer and what a reasonable police officer would do, right?
Yes,
Do you think you're a reasonable police officer?
I do.
Objection, how is that relevant?
Well, I think it does. It determines the standard by which she would gauge her questions.
Very well.
Do you think that Officer Melendez acted reasonably out there at the scene?
Based upon, no, I'm not going to allow that. I don't like the form of the question. I think that that's ultimately an issue for the trier of fact. You can use a better hypothetical.
Did you see anything on that video that justified 16 blows to the head?
No.
Would you say based on your, no, given of course earlier ruling, I have no further questions.
Process that, redirect us.
You were asked questions on cross-examination. How many times did you view the video?
Dozens.
When you viewed the video, was it shortly after the events had occurred?
The first time, yes.
And there was something that prompted that. Can you tell the jury what it was that prompted you?
There was the notification to me at 2 in the morning. I believe, again, it was on the 29th at 2 in the morning that someone was admitted to the hospital. And as a result of an injury, I ordered an immediate investigation, an administrative investigation.
Was there a use of force document that was generated as a result of this?
There was.
And was that done by Officer Melendez shortly after the injuries?
I believe so.
And did that have any input in your investigation and the fact that you were going to conduct an internal investigation?
I'm sorry.
Did that have any effect? Did it cause you to have the internal investigation?
No, the investigation was ordered at 2 in the morning when I found out that we had a prisoner who was injured and hospitalized.
So, in viewing the video, did you take a look at the entire video, including the setup for the surveillance as well as
I can object to keep characterizing setup for the surveillance.
It's the same, rephrase.
Did you see the car that was poised northbound on Michigan Avenue facing the Budget Inn?
I'm not sure what you're referring to, sir.
Referring to Melendez's car in the video.
Okay, what's the question?
Did you see the car pointed in a northerly direction towards the Budget Inn?
Yes.
Was it in a position, if you know, based on your viewing of the video, to surveil what it was that was going on at the Budget Inn that day?
I don't know. I wasn't there.
Okay, but you did see the video,
Yes.
and you did see what the video showed.
Yes.
And what did it show?
It showed that you could see the north and south, or I'm sorry, the east and westbound traffic, and you could see in that direction what he could see. I don't know.
Well, we've gone through what the video sees.
Yes.
That's all that you can say is seen, but you recognize that people in the car might have seen much more.
Yeah, absolutely.
You testified on your direct testimony about being data-driven to go to certain areas, to identify certain areas that police should show a presence.
Yes.
And that's what happened that day.
Objection. She can't speak for someone else.
Rephrase.
You know that the vehicle was a marked vehicle, do you not?
Yes.
You know that it was in plain view on the south side of Michigan Avenue, do you not?
Yes.
And you know that it was in an area that you had determined to be a high crime area.
Yes.
We talked a little bit about Mr. Dent and why it is that you did not ask him any questions. He never filed a citizen's complaint, did he?
No.
You okay?
Good
Watch
catch.
it now.
Did you see those reflexes?
I see that.
That was a good catch.
Those cat-like reflexes? Are we still? Sorry. So, between January 28th and March, whenever you made your investigation complete, and that's on the report,
I think mine's dated April 20th.
well, April 20th. You had requested the Michigan State Police to be involved in your administrative investigation. Is that right?
The criminal investigation.
In the criminal investigation?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm going to take it back to the question about not talking to Mr. Dent. You knew that Mr. Dent had a preliminary examination, right?
Yes.
That he was not bound over on resisting and obstructing, right?
Yes.
You said that on cross-examination to the prosecutor. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Okay, but he was bound over on another charge, was he not?
Yes.
All right, and that was on the possession with intent to deliver the 6 grams of cocaine, right?
Object. It has nothing to do with anything.
Well,
Well, go ahead, go ahead.
it does,
Go ahead.
because,
I said, go
all
ahead.
right, you can't approach a criminal defendant in the case and say, what do you want to do? After he's already been retained by counsel, can you?
That would be inappropriate.
Would it be inappropriate to you to approach him when he's represented?
If he has a lawyer, we shouldn't be talking to him.
All right. And that's prescribed by the Constitution. He has a right not to be spoken to by police officers, correct?
Correct. And had his lawyer had a complaint, he could have brought it to us at any time.
But he didn't.
No.
Where did you see him and his lawyer making his first complaint?
On the news.
On TV. Not by filing a complaint with the department, right?
Correct.
And not by filing a complaint with the Michigan State Police. They went on television, right?
Correct. I think I was contacted by his office just prior to it going on television.
Or to advise you that it was going to happen?
Yes.
Under those circumstances, you're not going to talk to Mr. Dent, are you?
No.
And you were never invited to talk to Mr. Dent?
No.
Were you? Now, talk about the Inkster Police Department being undermanned and underfunded.
Yes.
You have how many police officers?
At the time, I believe there were 25, including the chief.
You were asked questions specific to Mr. Melendez. Was he a productive officer?
Yes.
Was he an officer who you relied on?
I relied on all my officers.
And him in particular?
All of them, sir.
You were concerned, you said, about the potential for a civil suit, and that was one of the reasons why you had resigned as the chief. Did you feel that the city, is that true? Is that
I don't think I said anything about the potential for a civil suit. That was a concern of mine.
Okay.
Oh, you're talking about the indemnification.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so not a civil suit in this case, just the failure for the city of Inkster to indemnify their cops in general. Yes.
Did you take a position that the state law requires that the city indemnify their
I'm
police
going to
officers?
object to a legal debate.
Sustained.
Why is it that you thought that police officers should be protected when they're out there and they have a lawsuit as a result of their job?
Is this a question or an argument, and it's irrelevant?
Overall, go ahead.
In the cases of a city like Inkster, you're paying part-time officers $15 an hour with no benefits, and now you're going to say that if something happens and for a $100 filing fee, you don't have to you can sue. There are lots of suits that are filed that have merit, and there are also some that are filed that don't. And for the city to fail to represent, I did not think was consistent with state law, and I thought it was unethical. And quite frankly, that's not the direction and tone I want to take as a leader of a department.
You got people out there risking their lives every day, is that right?
Yes.
They wear certain equipment to protect them against harm, do they not?
Hopefully, yes.
And realistically, it's for a reason, is it not?
Yes, it is.
What is the reason?
Because it's difficult and dangerous work.
When you were asking for edits to the report that was given to you by, was it Sergeant Hayward?
Yes.
What was the purpose of asking for that? Was that because you were trying to, in some fashion, foster something favorable to the police department?
No, and my outcome wasn't necessarily favorable. It was because I wanted all the data and all the facts so I could come to an honest and objective conclusion. Some of the report reasons it was sent back was because it didn't include relevant information like at what time what happened on the video. I also sent it back because I didn't like something that was subjective.
I think we're talking about a report which is hearsay, and if she starts reciting all the things she has to
She
be
hasn't
done.
done that yet. Go ahead, counsel. You may proceed.
You were asked a question, whether or not you asked for information that would, in some fashion, be favorable for the police department. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
Well, you looked at the report, and it was implied by the question that you were trying to manipulate the report so it looked good to Inkster.
No such thing ever happened. I
Okay.
asked her whether or not it was a biased report.
Oh, well, go ahead, answer the question.
The specific content in that was returned because I didn't think it was objective. And to be honest with you, I didn't think the statement was objective.
You had the ability to review Officer Melendez's report, correct?
Yes,
I'm not going to go into what was in the report, but that was filed that day, the day that the incident occurred. Isn't that right?
perhaps after midnight, which would have put it in the following day, but contemporaneous with the incident.
Okay. Was it a complete report?
Yes.
Was it a full report?
Well, they're all preliminary reports, and a police report's never supposed to include every detail and fact. It's supposed to give you enough information that you can testify accurately and recall it. No report ever says everything that ever happened. It can't. It's just not possible. So it's supposed to be a preliminary report or a synopsis that allows you to recall the events and testify to them accurately.
Well,
So when you say complete,
do you remember it was detailed?
it was detailed, yes.
It was lengthy.
Yes.
And it took into account things that Mr. Dent had done to precipitate the action of the officer.
I'm going to object, Your Honor. He's getting into content.
Sustained.
When you made a determination as to whether or not there was a stranglehold, you're aware what the definition of a stranglehold is?
A chokehold?
Chokehold. I'm sorry, let's be specific. Chokeholds are forbidden in Inkster.
Yes.
You know what a chokehold is yourself.
Yes.
There is a definition that police officers, are taught as to what a chokehold is, correct?
Correct.
What is it?
It's an attempt to cut off the airway and the air supply.
Okay. You did not see that in the video,
I did not.
and you did not make any determination of that in your report.
Excuse me?
Your report does not say that you thought that he had employed a prohibited chokehold.
I'm going to object. Whether or not it's in a report is irrelevant to the question that we have before us.
Sustained rephrase.
Well, he is charged with strangulation. I don't know how it's irrelevant.
Rephrase the question.
Okay. And you were asked questions relating to the number of hits that Officer Melendez had given to the head of Mr. Dent, correct?
Yes.
You had made a determination that you didn't like it.
I did not.
You didn't say it was illegal.
Your Honor, that's for the jury.
Sustained. That's inappropriate.
All right. In considering whether or not it was reasonable, what factors would you look to determine whether or not a police officer could take the force that he was employing at the time, which was a head restraint, and then escalate it to hit someone in the head?
You would look at any precipitating factors, any escalation on the part of the subject that was trying to be restrained, in this case Mr. Dent. You would look to see if there was anything precipitous that would have brought rise to the escalation, i.e., in this case, whether it could have been anything, but in this case it was whether Officer Melendez had been bitten.
And once again, counsel has gone where he knows he's not supposed to. He's elicited something that can only come from the mouth of Officer Melendez. Should he choose to
Sustained.
say.
Strike that.
All right. I'd ask that she be qualified as an expert as it relates to the use of force.
I'm not gonna do that. I don't think it is been a basis.
You don't believe she's an expert?
Nope.
Did you draft the use of force policy in the city of Detroit?
In the city of Detroit?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you?
I worked with a group of people who redrafted a lot of the policies in the city of Detroit. I had input on that policy, but I didn't specifically write it by myself.
Okay. Did you have anything to do with the drafting of the policy of the use of force in Inkster?
Well, I think we're going well beyond any scope of what I
Any
asked.
qualifiers?
Here's the situation.
Say it again, Joe.
Here's the situation. This is called what? Redirect. This is something that should have been done on direct examination. It goes beyond the scope. Had this been done earlier, we could talk about use of force and anything else you wanted
Well,
to.
Judge, I'm only going into the issue related
But
to
I'm
being
not
hit in
going
the
to-
head, which the prosecutor brought out on his cross-examination.
I'm not gonna let you, this was an issue that should have been foreseen and the qualification should have been made earlier. I'm not gonna allow it at this point. This is redirect.
Based on the strikes to the head.
Irrespective.
All right. When you were looking at the video, did you ever have the video slowed down frame by frame?
I don't know what you mean by frame. I mean, I put it in slow motion.
Okay. But not frame by frame?
Um,
What I mean by frame is isolated picture, push a button, isolated picture, push a button.
I did not.
You know whether or not the Michigan State Police officer, well, what interaction did you have with Lieutenant Powell, if any?
In regards to this case?
Yes.
Not much. I reproduced documents that were requested, and that was about it.
Did you have a conversation with her regarding an analysis relating to any time differential?
I think, Your Honor, he's now asking about a conversation, which is an out-of-court statement.
Sustained. Counsel.
No, did you tell her about the 13-second
It's the
difference?
same objection.
Why?
Well, let him ask it.
I asked her the question, Your Honor. She said she didn't get told. I want to see if this person remembers that.
Go ahead, ask
Did you
it.
tell her about the 13-second differential between the time on the video of Officer Melendez's car versus the CAD system?
I think you mean a 13-minute differential.
13 seconds, I mean 13 minutes.
I did not have a conversation with Lieutenant Paul about the 13-minute differential, but it is noted in my report that there was a disparity between the CAD times and the in-car video times.
And was your report transmitted to Lieutenant Powell?
I do not know if she got it or not.
Okay. In any event, could you explain to the jury why that differential occurs, or what it is that is different about it?
Well, CAD, or computer-aided dispatch, is essentially the system that everybody calls into. So if you call 911, the dispatcher will put the information in the computer. It'll ship it to the officers, so the officer can actually see it on their in-car computer. It allows them to see notes in a little more detail. It allows dispatchers to see where their cars are, so to speak, so they know who's assigned to what run. It shows up on a map for them in their dispatch center. Those times would be time-stamped, and the times on CAD I would have a lot more confidence in, because they're tied to other checks and stuff, where the dispatcher actually go, at the sound of the tone, it'll be 11:15 hours, and there'll be a tone. So those times are actually watched and monitored for accuracy. The in-car video times are based on, I think, how they were set, and they tend to go off by a minute or two over periods of times. And the result in this case is that the in-car video showed one time, and what time CAD said it was happening, there was about a 13-minute difference. And sometimes you'll see that with in-car video, because like you don't fall back or spring forward, you'll see like an hour disparity. But in this case, it was 13 minutes.
Okay, so when we're looking then for what is the accurate time between the in-car video and the CAD system, which one is more accurate?
CAD, absolutely.
Why?
Again, there are checks and balances to CAD. There are times where the dispatcher will confirm the time.
All right, so then if the CAD system, and the CAD system is hooked into the audio is the CAD system hooked into the audio that the dispatcher hears?
You mean, can the dispatcher hear the radio communications?
Yes.
They should all be synced, but I don't know that the radio is not independent of the CAD system itself.
Okay, so if you're looking between the radio and the CAD, it's the CAD that is more accurate.
I would say the CAD would be accurate,
And
yes.
if you're looking at the video that is in Mr. Melendez's car or any of the other cars, and the CAD, it is the CAD that is the more accurate.
Yes.
I am, at this point, wanting to move to admit the CAD report that shows the times of the.
I'll allow it.
I'm gonna label it at, outside the presence of the jury, and that'll be Defense Exhibit D.
Very good, thank you.
I'd like to reserve an objection, we can deal with it
Very
later.
good. Are you done? Mr. Thomas,
I told it was done yesterday, but I think it,
are we done questioning?
hold on one minute, please.
We stipulated to the times yesterday. That document has some hearsay on it, that's all.
That's all, we need to redact it. Are we done with this witness, Mr. Thomas?
I am, Judge, thank you.
Thank you so much. You're done.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Next witness, let's stand, take a stretch break. Next witness. You may be seated. Step forward, witness, step forward. Raise your right hand, sir. Turn around. Do you solemnly swear affirm testimony about to give this man the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, self you got?
Yes, I do.
Please be seated. Spell your first and last name in that black sheet.
First name is Farhan, F as in Frank, A-R-H-A-N as in Nancy. Last name Aziz, A-Z as in zebra, E-E-Z as in zebra.
Is it Dr. Aziz?
That's correct.
Can you tell the jury what your occupation is?
I'm an emergency medicine resident at Garden City Hospital.
And how long have you been at Garden City Hospital?
Since 2012.
Dr. Aziz, you've been subpoenaed to appear here today,
Correct.
and as a result of that subpoena, I've asked for you to review a medical file. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Did you review the medical file for Floyd Dent,
I did.
January the 28th, 2015?
Correct.
And in that, did you review, well, first of all, did you participate in the treatment of Mr. Dent on that day?
Yes, I did.
All right. Can you explain to the jury what happened?
Yes, Mr.
I'm going to object at this point. Is he explaining as to the treatment or what happened in the precipitating events that led to him going to the hospital?
Well, why don't you let the witness try to answer the question?
Well, I'm
Do
objecting
you
to the
know,
form of
oh,
the
well,
question.
very good. Overruled. What happened? Go ahead.
So Mr. Dent was brought in to us in police custody by two officers. I proceeded to perform a physical exam. He had some swelling and injury noted to the right side of his face, some swelling there, pain, and we proceeded to order a CT scan of the...
What does the CT scan show?
The CT scan we got of the brain, the facial, all the bones of the face, as well as the neck. The CT scan showed a fracture of the bone surrounding the right eye, the orbital wall.
Let's back up a little bit. Let's just certify him as an expert in the area. What type of work do you do, sir?
Emergency medicine, correct.
And how long have you been so employed?
I'm a resident, so at the time of the case, I was a third-year resident, and now I'm in my last year.
Okay, and how many cases, can you qualify, counsel?
Sir, how many cases do you see on any given evening in Garden City?
15 to 20 a shift.
And did the
25
do
of
you see people that are injured?
Yes,
Injured?
absolutely.
And how many years have you been doing this?
Since 2012,
Safe to say that you've seen hundreds of people that have come in with traumatic injuries?
correct.
And you are a physician in the state of Michigan?
Correct.
And you were treating those people who came to see you?
Correct.
In terms of fractures and ordering of tests and things like that, do you have any experience in doing the treatment of people who have come in with fractures, not just to the face?
Correct.
How many?
I don't have a count, but we see cases like this all the time.
All right, and then how about for injuries to the face?
All the time.
All right, going to have him qualify.
Any objection?
What kind of expert?
Yeah.
Mike, well, sorry,
And this is done in an emergency room,
Correct.
and all the things that you have talked about have occurred at the emergency room?
Meaning, like what I just mentioned? Yeah, that was all in the emergency room, correct.
I'll allow.
Judge, if I may just water your one question?
Take your time,
Thank you.
please.
Just to be clear, Doctor, you're, and I'm not trying to be insulting, but you're a resident still?
Correct.
All of your orders have to be signed off by an attending physician, is that correct?
No, I work with an attending physician, but I have my own license and I can order whatever I want.
Okay. Thank you, Judge. With that, I'll leave it to the court's discretion.
Emergency room expert, emergency room, doctor in emergency room medicine. I'm gonna allow, based on not just his experience, he said he's seeing 15 to 25 people per shift, and of course, that's still allowed. Go ahead, counsel. You were the treating physician for Mr. Dent?
I was, and Dr. Hal Wynn was my attending physician. Every case that a resident sees, we see with an attending physician.
Okay,
And
go ahead.
so Nguyen is Nguyen for the court reporter. First name H-A-O, right? Okay, now, when you saw Mr. Dent, you were starting to describe what it was that you saw that were his injuries. What did you see?
So I saw swelling around the right side of the face. He did have some complaints of chest wall pain on the right side, but no obvious injury or deformity there.
Tell the jury what chest welting is.
Sorry, chest. He just had pain along the side of his chest,
What else?
and then obviously the pain along the face, on the right side of the face.
All right, and the pain that was associated to the right side, were there any injuries that were apparent to you at that point?
There was swelling there, so it's concerning if there may be a bony injury.
Was he bleeding when he came in?
He was not actively bleeding at that time.
Do you remember the size of the wound?
I do not.
And so, what did you do?
So we initially ordered the CT scan. Once the CT scan findings came back, then we proceeded to order additional testing. The CT scan showed the fracture of the right side of around the bones around the right eye, and then also showed findings concerning for a bleed in the brain. So at that point, we obtained an IV, obtained lab work, and then I talked to the neurosurgery team.
Now, did you have any conversations with him about what happened that evening?
The patient?
Yes.
Yes.
When you are treating a patient, do you ask them what happened?
Yes, I do.
Why?
I need to get the history, their side of any patient that we see, we must have, almost as important as a physical exam is the history of what happened.
Okay. Now, when that history is taken, is it written down?
It is.
Is it made a part of the medical record?
It is.
Do you rely on that history?
I do.
Is that history kept in the ordinary course of business? It's required to be done?
Correct.
Okay. And we've already got exhibit number 12 admitted. Is that correct, counsel?
Yes.
That is the medical record from Garden City Hospital. Sir, did you review the medical record from Garden City Hospital?
I did.
Did you bring parts of it with you?
I did.
If you need to refresh your recollection, I'll ask you to look at it, but I want to test your memory as best I can.
Judge, if I may just very briefly, I have not had an opportunity to see what Dr. Aziz has reviewed. Obviously, this court has ruled that only certain portions of the medical records come
Well,
in.
ask them.
Well, but before he starts referring to a medical record that may be in contrast to the medical records that are part of this exhibit, I want to make sure that that's not going to happen on the record in front of the jury. The court is only allowed certain medical records.
Okay, very good. Let's go through page by page.
I haven't seen it. Let's go.
Go by what you review, page by page. We'll be here all day. Take it out.
Meaning what I have with me, or?
What you reviewed and what page?
May we approach?
Yes, that's not a problem.
So I have
Okay.
consultations, and I have my.
I asked you if you gave a history, did you say yes?
Yes.
And what was the history?
He in terms of what are you looking for
All right,
specifically?
you'd already indicated he complained of chest pain, right?
Correct.
Did he tell you why it was that occurred?
He did.
What did he say?
He said he was on the floor and the police were sitting on top of him, pushing his chest into the ground.
Okay. Did he also complain about being tased?
He did. He did.
And did he indicate how many times he was tased?
The best of my recollection, he did not know. I believe I got the information from the police.
Okay. If you looked at your history that was given at the time in Garden City, would that refresh your recollection?
It may.
Would you like to look at it? I'd address your attention to the last few lines in the first page.
Yeah, it's the way I document it. It's unclear who provided that history. The best of my recollection would be the police, but I am not 100% sure.
All right, then. Did he talk about loss of consciousness?
I asked him about that.
And this was right after the incident, right?
Correct.
And what did he say to you?
He was not sure.
Did he complain of his neck at all at the time of giving the history?
No.
Did he have any nausea or any vomiting?
No.
And when you did your examination, did he appear to be in any acute distress?
Not in pain, but otherwise not in, I wouldn't say distressed, but he was complaining of pain, yes.
As a result of the pain, did you prescribe him any medication?
I did.
And what was the medication that you gave him?
He was given morphine.
Now, is morphine an opiate, if you know?
It is.
And you didn't prescribe any cocaine that night, did you?
I did not.
All right. In fact, doctors don't prescribe cocaine, do they?
No, we do not.
It's not your practice in any event, right? Right?
Correct.
Okay. Now, what did you do then in terms of testing? You talked a little bit to us up there about what it is that you have. Did you ask for physical tests to be done?
Physical test meaning lab work, blood work?
Well, okay, let's talk about the lab work, blood work. What did you order?
We ordered a complete blood count, basic metabolic profile, which gives me the electrolytes and the kidney function. We ordered alcohol level. We ordered blood testing for how thin the blood is or how long it takes to clot. And we ordered a urine drug screen.
Why did you order a urine drug screen?
Based on the results that could affect our management of the patient.
And so, you know what time that drug screen was ordered? I'm sorry, the urine screen was ordered?
I do not know exactly what time, but it was during the ER stay.
Was it early on in the ER stage?
After the results of the CT scan.
What time did he get to the ER that night?
I want to say it was close to 11 p.m., but I'd have to refer to the medical record to
Please do.
the exact time. Yeah, looks like arrival time of 22:58 on January 28th.
That would have been just before 11 o'clock, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, how long does it take you to do the workup before the tests are ordered?
Usually how it works is once a patient shows up on our list, one of the physicians who's there signs up for the case and then proceeds to go see the patient, evaluate the patient, get the history, and perform the physical exam. And we go back to our desks and put in the orders for the nurse to complete.
Did you order a CT scan?
Yes, I
In
did.
the CT scan, what was the finding in the CT scan?
Medial blowout fracture of the right orbit and a possible subarachnoid hemorrhage.
When you do a determination of a medial blowout fracture, could you describe that for the jury?
Yes, so there are multiple bones that make up, protecting our eye sockets. And so one of the middle side of the right side was fractured.
And was it a displaced fracture? Do you know what that is?
I do. It was not displaced.
And was the tissue holding it in place?
Correct. It was not an open fracture.
Did it require any surgery? If you know.
To the best of my knowledge, no, it did not. Sometimes they require surgery as an outpatient basis, usually not done during the hospital stay. So that would have to be with a follow-up determination of the either ophthalmologist or the ENT specialist.
About ophthalmology, was he complaining of difficulty with his vision when he came in?
He was not.
Did you get a result of the, who was it that CT scan was referred to?
The radiologist.
And who, do you know who the radiologist was?
I would have to refer to the record.
Please. If you refresh your recollection, then just put the paper down and tell me what you're going to tell me.
So it seems the radiologist was Dr. James Sellis.
Was there a consultation done with Dr. Michael Sherman?
There was.
And he was,
But this wasn't. This was done once the patient was admitted, not through the ER.
oh, I see.
Yeah.
Was there, regarding the subarachnoid hemorrhage, that was determined to be a question for you, did you make a referral for evaluation of whether or not he was suffering from a subarachnoid hemorrhage?
Yes.
What is a subarachnoid hemorrhage?
In essence, it's a bleed in the brain.
And what do you do to make a determination as to whether or not there's a bleed in the brain?
We'll go by the imaging results. In this case, the area of concern, I remember actually, once we got the results, I called the radiologist and spoke to him directly. There was an area on the imaging that kind of brightened up on the CT scan. It could be consistent with a bleed, but it may not have been also. It wasn't a 100% diagnosis at the time. But what it showed at that time was concerning for a subarachnoid hemorrhage, especially given the history of being struck in the face. And so at that point, we have to treat it as if it is, and then allow the neurosurgery team to reevaluate and then make a decision, which is what happened. So they did the repeat CT scan approximately 12 hours after, and that came back negative, that there was no bleed. And so the first imaging what we saw wasn't a bleed.
Now, would you expect that these doctors that are doing the testing are going to also take a history from the patient?
Absolutely.
And do you think that based on that history, that they're going to rely on that history in terms of the evaluation and the treatment plan?
Yes.
I'm going to object to speculation as to what those other doctors may or may not have done.
Is it the practice in the hospital for every doctor to do a history determination as to what it is that the patient's saying about himself?
Yes.
Okay. And in your review of the record, you see that they have taken histories.
Yes.
All right. Now, did Garden City Hospital generate a report on the chemistry of Mr. Dent's blood and urine?
Yes.
Okay. Tell the jury about the blood screen.
The blood tests that we did, the complete blood count, the basic metabolic profile, which again tells us electrolytes and kidney function, the testing for how the blood is clotting, as well as the alcohol level, those blood tests all came back unremarkable, nothing of particular concern.
Did you ask for a blood screen relating to the use of drugs?
The-
That would have been controlled substances, not just drugs.
No, the only I guess drug, quote unquote, would be alcohol. That would be the only intoxicating substance that we test for through the blood.
Okay. What did you do, if anything, to determine whether or not he had any substances in his body? Let me start again. Did you think it was important for the treatment of the patient to determine whether or not he had any controlled substances in his body at the time that you saw him in the emergency?
Yes, I think it is.
Is it your practice to do drug screens on people who come in who have been engaged in assaultive behavior?
Depending on the history, it can be.
Okay. In this particular case, did you order a urine screen?
I did.
And tell the jury what a urine screen is, please.
So the urine drug screen tests for multiple different things. It can tell us if there's marijuana in the system, opiates, cocaine, amphetamines, benzodiazepines, different either medical drugs or street drugs. And depending on the results, again, that can affect our management.
And so it is considered for you as a test that is of importance in terms of management of the patient?
Yes.
Do you rely on this test?
Yes.
Is this test given often in situations such as this?
Yes.
What is a presumptive drug screen?
I don't know if I understand the question.
If you don't, then what did the drug screen show you when you received it?
So the drug screen, at the time of admission, actually was not back yet. Reviewing the records, though, I saw that it came back positive for cocaine and opiates.
Now, is there a time that is noted on the report itself?
There always is. I do not have those records with me, though.
These records have been admitted into evidence, and I'm going on page 26 of the Garden City Hospital record for purposes of counsel.
I think you have the actual, is that the exhibit then? You can refer to the exact exhibit.
Okay. Let's see how this goes. I ask you to take a look at page 26.
So the results are at 3:12 a.m.
All right, and what were the results?
They show the urine drug screen was positive for opiates and for cocaine.
All right, you can set that aside for a sec. And we talked about morphine. Morphine is an opiate, correct?
That is correct.
Morphine was administered that evening for pain.
That is correct.
Was that discontinued once you found cocaine in his system?
No,
Did he?
not that I'm aware of.
And you know at what time the morphine was administered?
I would again have to refer to the medical record.
Please do.
You can direct them to page 42.
I can.
Thank you.
Doctor, did you hear that?
I did.
42
That seems at 1:14 a.m.
at 1:14 a.m. Now, at that point, were you aware of whether or not a search warrant was issued for his blood by the police officers that were involved in the case in Inkster?
I was not.
Did you ever become aware of the fact that a search warrant had been executed?
No.
Did you expect that if blood was drawn at 3:58 and 3:59 a.m. that morning, whether or not the results of that blood draw would be consistent with your urine screen?
Judge, at this point, I'll object. You qualified him as an expert in emergency medicine, not necessarily this area of toxicology, so.
Sustained.
If a person had an administered morphine, well, let me ask you this. Morphine was administered prior to the urine screen, correct?
Correct.
Morphine showed up on your urine screen, did it not?
That's correct. Well, opiates.
Opiates.
Yeah.
Morphine is an opiate.
Correct.
So the urine screen was accurate as it related to a drug that you know was administered. Would you agree?
Yes.
And do you have any reason to believe that the urine screen was inaccurate as it related to the drugs that were found?
I'll object, calling into question something that the jury will have to determine.
Sustained, rephrase.
Well, okay, you're a doctor, right? You have to say
Yes.
yes or no. You order these screens on a regular basis,
That is correct.
and as a doctor, in treating a patient, you're concerned about the well-being of your patient, correct?
That is correct.
And you want to provide a good quality of care, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And you use a urine tox in order to accomplish that quality of treatment that you think that patients desire.
That is correct.
And so you rely on that yourself for the treatment of the patient.
Yes.
You were aware, did you have any conversations with him after he was taken out of the emergency room?
Mr. Floyd Dent?
You said him.
Did you have conversations with Mr. Dent after he left the emergency room?
No, I did not.
Did you follow him into his admission into the morning of January 29th?
Yes, I took care of him until he left the emergency room.
You know what time you left the emergency room?
I would have to refer to the record. Do you happen to know in this document where the nursing notes are?
Yes? What page are you on?
I'm flipping through.
Um,
Usually it'll be documented there what time he was taken up to the ICU.
Okay, so take a look at, if you will, page 73 at the middle or the top. And see if that helps you anymore.
So what page 72 says, or 73, I'm sorry, at the top, it says the time of the order,
Yes?
which I put in, but that doesn't say what time he was transferred up.
Okay.
So that I do not know.
All right, now. Did you administer Fentanyl to the patient Floyd Dent? Did you order that?
Yes, I ordered that.
And what time was that ordered?
Again, I would have to refer to the medical record.
Refer to page 42, please.
It's time-stamped at 2:09 a.m.
Okay. Is that when the order was entered?
It appears so, yes.
Does that mean when it was given?
It would presumptively be given soon thereafter.
Because nurses are supposed to do what you say immediately.
They're supposed to. Takes time for the medicine to get from pharmacy and the like, so it'll be soon thereafter.
What is fentanyl?
It's a medication to prevent seizures.
Okay. I'll offer him for cross-examination.
Cross-examination.
Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning.
My name is Carmen DeFranco. I'm going to ask you just a few questions. If you don't hear me, you don't understand me, just ask me to repeat myself. Is that fair?
Yes.
All right. You indicated on direct examination that it's the practice of the hospital to take patients' histories prior to performing any work on them when they go to different areas of the hospital. Is that correct?
For the...
Different consultations?
oh, yes. The consultations, yes.
So a consultation with you, you would get a history. A consultation with Dr. Smith or Jones?
Yes.
A different history would be given? Is that correct?
Each physician would be responsible for obtaining a history, correct?
And that history is taken in part from the patient's statements?
Yes.
Taken in part from documents that were prepared earlier?
Occasionally.
Taken in part from, as you indicated in your history, statements from the police?
Correct.
So it's not necessarily all attributable to the patient's mouth?
That is correct.
In fact, especially in the instance of residents, there are often times where you will tell an attending physician a history, and then that attending physician will make the entry. Is that correct?
No. We do our own chart.
Okay, you will do your own chart.
Correct.
There are times, though, where one doctor will dictate to another doctor certain things?
So my responsibility is to report to my attending physician, but it's also my responsibility to complete the full chart.
You still have Exhibit 12 on your lap there, Doctor?
Yes, I do. If
I want you to flip to page... Excuse me, give me one moment.
You want me to give it to you?
If you know where I'm going, then...
Please.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Doctor, give me just a moment. All right, page 22 of the Exhibit 12 there. And actually, you can start on page 21. I want you to look at page 21 first. That is a document that you reviewed that you had in your control when you first came in?
came into the court today?
Into court?
Yes.
That small stack that you brought, that was one of the documents?
Yes.
Correct? All right. Now, if we flip to page 22, this is a report by Dr. Jacobs, is it not?
Correct.
And if we look under Dr. Jacobs, where the signature line would be, it indicates that it was dictated by another doctor, is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, so that means Dr. Jacobs may not have actually received that information. It would have come from Dr. El-Falal, I believe.
That is correct.
All right.
I'm sorry, can you explain what you mean by receive that information?
Well, if it was dictated to Dr. Jacobs, that means it's coming from Dr. El-Falal's mouth. He's the one telling Dr. Jacobs that, is that correct?
That is correct.
All right.
Could you spell that, please?
Yes, I'm sorry, it is E-L-F-A-L-L-A-L. You made the determination to admit Mr. Dent that evening.
Yes.
In fact, on page 73, if you can go back to that page, that counsel questioned you on earlier, at 219, you indicated the reason for the admission was the severity of the illness, or in this case, the injuries.
Yes.
In fact, these injuries were so severe that you had him admitted to the intensive care unit, not just into the hospital in general.
That is correct.
What's the difference? How do you get there?
Depending on the severity of the illness, depending how bad the patient is or what kind of situation we find, what diagnosis we find, would dictate what level of care they're going to receive.
Normally, to go into intensive care, is that serious or,
Correct. That's the highest level of care that we have in the hospital.
Okay, that's the highest care.
Absolutely.
And then what would be next after that?
A step level down would be what's called a progressive care unit.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And then down from there.
Okay.
In fact, you even deemed Mr. Dent in critical condition when you had him admitted. Or is that something, let me ask you, do you do that?
Yes, we usually we usually indicate what condition they are in.
All right, so if you look at page 5 then of Exhibit 12, the last section, you indicated that he was to be in critical care for the level of care. Is that?
Level of care, critical care, patient condition, I wrote fair. Critical care meaning ICU.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, what's that mean? We hear it on TV all the time. You know, critical, stable, fair. What's that mean?
So it's a classification based on what you expect, or at that time, how the patient is doing, and kind of what you foresee, and if, in his treatment. Somebody who comes in, let's say in a cardiac arrest, and we get their pulse back, but their heart rate's real slow, or their blood pressure is real low, I would say that person is critical. There's a possible likelihood, or possibly even a high likelihood, that he may not survive the night or the next 24 hours, 48 hours, depending. And so depending on how
So after critical is what?
Meaning like
levels.
the levels, there's critical, fair, stable, classifications such as that. I mean,
Okay, so fair and stable are non-life threatening.
correct.
You expect that person to live, is that correct?
Yes,
From the injuries or the illness?
at that point that we have there, yes.
Okay, Bet, you may proceed.
Thank you. Counsel asked you if Mr. Dent was bleeding when you first saw him. You said he wasn't actively bleeding?
Correct.
Could you tell if he had been bleeding?
Yes.
How were you able to tell that?
You could see blood on his clothes and whatnot.
A little bit of blood, a lot of blood?
I would say mild, yeah.
You indicated that you authorized the morphine for Mr. Dent at 1:14, I believe, was the time that you said from page 42. Is that correct?
I would have to look again, but
I think it's page 42.
yes, at 1:14.
And then the urine screen took place at 3:12, as it's reflected
Yes.
on page 26?
Yes,
So Mr. Dent was given a drug more than 2 hours before this screen.
that is correct.
And he was also given phentoin,
Phenytoin, yeah.
phenytoin, almost an hour and a half before that screen.
Yes.
As it relates to morphine, do you know how long that has an effect in a person's blood?
Usually symptomatically, it varies from patient to patient how long they'll get relief.
Let me ask you this. Would you expect to administer morphine more often than you would the phenytoin?
Absolutely.
Why is that?
Like I mentioned, phenytoin, also known as Dilantin, is a medication that's used particularly in patients who have concern for a bleed in the brain, to prevent that blood in the brain. It will cause irritation to the brain tissue, and that can cause a seizure. So the reason we would give the Dilantin or the phenytoin would be to prevent a seizure from occurring. So it's not often given. Cases like this, it would be patients with seizures. We may start them on that medication in consultation with neurology, or other medications like it.
Do you know how long phenytoin has an effect on the body?
I would have to look that up.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Are you trained in toxicology at all?
We do some training in toxicology.
You.
Yeah, I'm asking you specifically, not we in general.
Yes, emergency medical physicians are trained in toxicology.
Well, you want to withdraw your...
No, Judge. I'm perfectly fine with how he's answering so far.
Okay, but when you don't, then that's when you qualify him, right?
Well, I'm not. I don't know that I will qualify this witness or not. Judge.
Okay.
I may, but I want to leave that subject for
Take your time.
further on. Would it be a fair statement to say that the urinalysis that's conducted, that's reflected on page 26, tests, it's an immunoassay test?
Correct.
Do you know what that term means?
Yes.
What is an immunoassay test?
I mean, it basically tests for either breakdown of the product or the product itself within the urine, and it will come up as positive or negative.
And it does so by what's called a reagent, or a item that's added to the urine to see if it will react to a particular fluorescent color.
I would have to look up the exact mechanism of that.
Okay, but that is a type of immunoassay that I've just read?
That is type of immunoassay, correct.
And-
Don't you love it when lawyers try to be scientists and doctors? Don't you just love it?
Judge, you don't know that my undergrad is in organic chemistry.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Now, let's have him sworn.
What'd you say?
Let's have him sworn now.
Okay.
All right. So, doctor, let me go back. The immunoassay screen is a presumptive test. Is that correct? Are you familiar with the term presumptive test?
Can you explain?
No, I'm asking you.
Well,
Unfortunately,
he's
I can't.
asking you to explain.
I'm asking you.
Slow it down. Slow it down now.
I ain't gonna object, I don't want Mr. DeFranco testifying.
Please don't, Mr. DeFranco. We know you are
This is the only
smart.
time that Mr. Downs and I are going to agree on this case.
That's a stipulation they agreed to. Go ahead, seriously, go ahead.
I believe my intelligence has just been placed on the record for all eternity, Judge, so I am quite pleased.
But seriously, what I need you to do is, remember,
Yeah.
the judges are the
I
facts,
understand, Judge.
okay? We need to understand,
No, I
okay?
understand. Have you heard the term presumptive test in the past?
Yes.
Are you familiar with it or no? If you're not familiar with it, I can ask the question differently.
Ask the question differently, please.
If we look at page 26, I'm sorry, it's not on page 26. It is. Let me ask you this. When you get it, let's do it this way, without referring to the actual document. If a urine screen comes back, do you have the option of sending that off for a confirmatory analysis?
I do not.
Okay. Do you know if the hospital does?
So at our facility, we do not. But I know at tertiary care centers you can.
Oh, it's-
Or you can draw blood tests and get more additional testing.
Do you know what is being detected, what specifically is being detected in that blood screen, or that urine screen, I'm sorry?
What metabolite specifically?
Is it a metabolite? Is it the parent drug? What are we looking at?
I would have to look that up.
All right. But it's not reflected anywhere here.
No.
A positive urine screen doesn't indicate that the parent drug is anywhere in the urine, is that correct?
I thought he said he wasn't sure yet.
That's what I'm saying. Come on now.
In the records as you see them, you cannot determine if a parent drug is present in those screens.
That is correct.
You can't determine what, if any, metabolites are in those screens.
That is correct.
Would you agree with me that the metabolites of certain drugs are inert?
Yes.
Are you familiar with benzoglycol?
Does it ring a bell?
All right. Do you know what cocaine metabolizes into?
I would have to look that up.
Okay. So, do you know if cocaine has any active metabolites?
I would have to look that up.
Can we get to something that he can answer?
Well, Judge,
Okay,
I
all the
don't know what
toxicology stuff, he has to look that up. Now, let's just go back to the treatment on that date in question, please.
If we can go back and look at page 25.
You got it?
I'm sorry, it is on 26. In the center of the page, there is an indication that there is a slightly abnormal haline cast on Mr. Dent's urine.
Do you
You
see
see
that,
that?
witness?
The haline cast,
You see it?
center of the page, 26.
Yes.
Reflects that it's abnormal,
0 to 2. I'd say 0 to 2, yeah.
but it says abnormal ABM.
Underneath it, yes.
All right. Haline cast is a deposit in the urine that could be indicative of some other issues,
Yes.
including kidney problems.
Yes.
And
But it's non-specific.
no, I understand, but I'm saying it could be indicative of
It could be many
Wait a
things.
minute, wait a minute. This is not going. Okay, we have people from the community that are very learned and people that don't have a lot of expertise in certain areas, scientific, me included. You're going to have to use words that convey a simpler meaning, because I'm confused.
a kidney problem, Judge. I don't know how to make that simpler.
Well, that's not
Okay,
what you said
What are the
earlier,
kidneys?
okay?
What are the kidneys, sir?
We know that.
How are the kidneys involved?
That's what I'm saying. Let's move on to something relevant.
Judge, I believe this is very relevant
To what?
to
Just
the
move on.
case in general.
Just move
All right,
on.
if we look on page 23 of this as well, there are two different tests that show a potential issue again for kidney problems in Mr. Dent. Do you see that marked with the 3 subscript?
I'm not sure. What are you referring to?
All right, in the GFR column, far right, there was a test taken at 1:30, on 1:30 at 2 a.m., and another one taken at 4:51 on 1:29. Do you see those two? And then there's the...
121.
Let them find it, please.
So, I'm sorry, can you repeat, what are you referring to, the GFR?
The GFR, do you see the GFR there?
Yes, I see the GFR.
There are subscripts underneath the levels of GFR. What is GFR? Let's ask that.
The glomerular filtration rate. It's a term used to kind of reflect overall function of the kidney.
What is this? What is it? What?
Glomerular filtration rate.
What is that?
It's just,
Please.
Okay, can you spell it?
you're testing me now. GLOMERURAL.
Okay. What is it?
It's a overall test to indicate the function of the kidney, how the kidney is doing. No, but I don't know what you're saying with the
Okay,
twos
so
and
when
the...
you say the function of it, is it working right? Is
Correct.
it eliminating like it should?
Yes.
Is it
Yes.
damaged?
Yes.
Is there blood in it?
Doesn't answer that.
Okay, but I'm just saying, is it working okay?
Correct.
Okay, great.
If you look directly under the number value for GFR in those two tests, there is a subscript of
What's
underneath
subscript
it.
mean?
There's another number underneath them. Do you see that?
The 80? Are you referring to the number 80?
Under the 80, correct. There is another number, a 3. Do you
Yes.
see that?
Yes.
And that 3 refers to a comment below.
I don't know if it does. Yes. Okay. I see that.
And in that comment, it indicates that for that value under the GFR, that there could be kidney damage. Is that correct?
In that range is underneath. Yes.
Are you aware as to whether or not individuals with kidney damage can cause a false positive in the cocaine
No, I'm not.
immunoassay? You're not aware of that, or it can't happen?
Is that beyond your expertise?
No, you would need to ask toxicologist that question.
May I have just a moment, Your Honor?
You mad?
Thank you, Judge. No further questions.
Anything further?
Yes, Judge. Just briefly, as it relates to 2 areas.
Always be careful when lawyers say just briefly.
You asked for a urine screen?
Yes.
You got a urine screen.
Yes.
Urine screen's got findings, right?
Yes.
Findings are cocaine, right?
Yes.
And morphine, which you gave them.
Yes.
All right. You relied on it.
Yes.
Short?
Judge, I would object to the last question. He indicated earlier on direct that he did not rely on it. It was already done by the time the patient had already
I
left.
thought you were, okay, rephrase.
Let me re-answer that question. Thank you. I myself did not rely on the results because I did not have the results. But the physicians treating the patient, yes, they will rely on it, absolutely.
You didn't order that test for no reason.
Correct.
You ordered it so that he could be treated.
Correct.
Okay, now, he was put in critical care because of the fact that he was complaining of a subarachnoid hemorrhage, right?
Because of our concerns that he had a subarachnoid hemorrhage, yes.
Was that the only concern that took him to critical care?
Yes.
Did you rule out the fact that he had a subarachnoid hemorrhage during his treatment there at the hospital?
At the hospital, yes. Not during the emergency room, yes.
No, but you were aware the testing was done?
Yes.
The determination was made?
Yes.
And you've reviewed those reports?
Yes.
And the report is in the record as exhibit number 12, correct?
Correct.
And you know that that there was no subarachnoid hemorrhage?
Yes.
Okay, so he was put in critical care out of a concern for him. But the reason that he was placed in critical care was determined not to be active.
Yes.
Nothing further, Judge.
Thank you, step down. Next witness, how long is this next witness?
Long.
All right.
Well, wait, I might have one here. I asked to be at 11, it's a very short one.
Very good, let's stand up. Let's take a stretch break. After this witness is over, we're gonna go to lunch for an hour and 15 minutes, and long means the rest of the day. But we're doing very well, okay? Very good, thank you. Call your next witness. You may be seated.
She's not here yet. I have witnesses available, Judge.